Hey, welcome to the Holy Rival Show. Here, this is where we talk about BYU, Utah coverage, Pac, Big 12 coverage, really from a red and blue perspective. And there's a lot to cover today. And really, the topic of today is the Pac DOA, dead on arrival. So I'm Wild Ute. I'm here with Bomber. How you doing today, Bomber?
I'm doing great. It's nice to have nice weather out in Utah for once.
Absolutely. Extremely nice weather. The big news today here, the big news is that ESPN is out of the Pac 12 TV talks. And that report came out today. Andrew Marchand from the uh, New York Post reported that. And so we're going to give our perspective on that from a Pac view here and also from the Utah Utes point of view. So, yeah, what are your initial thoughts, Bomber?
One, it's not a big surprise. I think ESPN has always been a very low number, but they've sort of have put their foot down and like, look, we're not really negotiating here. If you guys want to come back to us and meet our original demands, we might deal with you. But right now, we've got bigger fish to fry. And as we've seen with some of the contract issues that the ACC and the Big Ten have, that is not a surprise. It's not a shock. So. Yeah, the Pac. I know they've been asking for time, and they thought time would fix all wounds, but in
Yeah,
this case, I think time is just eating them alive.
definitely. Definitely. It's from a Pac fan standpoint, this is a really tough news to take. And I know a lot of Pac folks are probably asking themselves, really, can we trust this news? Like, is it true?
Right.
Is it just another Big 12 Karen? I mean, there's some pretty reputable reporting outlets that are reporting this, multiple outlets. So it seems like at the moment that it's true. It could change in an hour, it could change in a day, but
Right.
really, it seems to be true right now. And I'll tell you from the Pac standpoint, this is devastating. If ESPN isn't involved in this TV contract, really, the Pac's in a world of hurt. There's not a
Right.
lot of other places to really go for the Pac. I mean, really, the calling card for the Pac is that late night TV spot. And really, how many other channels are producing that? I mean, you're talking about maybe FS1. And what we've heard, Fox Sports is pretty much out of the negotiations too, the media negotiations. So
Right.
really bad news for a Pac fan, if true. Hoping that maybe something else changes, but if this is the case, it's pretty devastating.
Well, and they need to decide at what point do they start to be concerned for their own schools.
Right.
They've been unified, they've stuck together, and it's laudable. People can definitely look at that as a great example. But at the end of the day, these presidents and chancellors are CEOs of their schools. They need to look after their school before they start to continue to be concerned about their conference. So. And then there's that other story that came out this weekend that said Stanford might be the team that actually moves to the Big Ten sooner than Oregon and Washington. Stanford would be matched with Notre Dame,
Yeah.
and Notre Dame's money's drying up as well. And NBC is screaming bloody murder that they don't have this additional money to run these late window games. So at the end of the day, there's only so much time that can be split up on these Saturdays, and there's only so many slots on different TV channels. So I don't know what the Pac-12 is going to do, but at this point, if I was up at the U, I'd start, I'd be building a second and third option at this point.
Yeah, there's they better be right now. And that's
Right,
interesting. The Stanford fit for the Big Ten. You mentioned with Notre Dame,
right,
Stanford just seems like a perfect fit for the Big Ten. Outside of its like unpassionate fan base, you could say, at least on social
right,
media. It just seems like a fit academically. I mean, like outside of football, they're elite at almost all our sports. They've won multiple trophies for all sports combined. So it really, I think Stanford is like such an easy fit for the big. I know that they're not getting a lot of play because it's all Oregon and Washington. But that's an interesting thought, Bomber, right there. That Stanford might be a good play, and I agree with that definitely. Let's go back here. So, like from from the Ute standpoint, what's Utah going to do with this news? I mean, Utah needs to keep all options open.
Right.
And
Yeah.
a lot of Ute fans, I understand the hesitation to leave the pack. I do. I love the pack too. It's done so much for Ute fans. But really, look at what's going on. If ESPN's out, if Fox is out, if we're talking about putting football games on the CW and Apple TV, like, let's get real about what's going to happen to the program
Right.
5 years down the line, 2 years down the line. It just doesn't look good at all. So I'm sure hoping that the University of Utah is, considering all options. And of course, I mean, that's got to be trying to make a plea to get into the Big Ten. It's talking with your Mark, seeing what options there are. With the Big 12 too. And I'm sure, having some conversations on the side with the ACC. Don't know how practical that is anywhere, given their issues going on. But the Utes better be doing some research right now, not just looking in the pack. Elsewhere.
They've been playing for time for months now, right? It's 11 months, a little over 11 months when the news came out with UCLA and USC. They thought the longer that they had, the more time that they gave to the programs and to the, commissioner to go out and get a good deal, that they would have more options presented to them. Time would string out and they would have more options. The exact opposite has happened. The economy's gotten worse. There's been a recession in the media markets, especially in sports media, and that's, to this extent, never been seen before. And it was just a bad bet. They made some poor choices. Now they need to cut bait and actually decide, where do we want to have our schools well placed? I don't think any Pac-12 school that goes to the Big 12 is going to lose anything. Their programs are not going to go backward. The league is going to be very competitive. They're going to 3 or 4 teams could easily go to the playoff every year, especially if there's only 3 conferences. So I wouldn't look at this as a negative for any Pac-12 school. I as far as I'm concerned, it's just different access. The only thing that is a little bit more extreme is travel, but when you have so many teams available, you can also mitigate that by breaking into pods and splitting the country up. So I think most of that stuff can be mitigated, and at this point, it's all pride.
One thing I really love about the Big 12 is the fan passion. Like,
Right.
the fans actually care about football. There's some Pac schools that seem that way in Oregon State, Washington, USC
Right.
fans. I mean, Arizona fans love their basketball, but there's a lot of quiet fan bases that in the Pac that just don't necessarily seem to care.
Right.
And from a Ute fan perspective, that's something attractive about the Big 12, because Ute fans are kind of psycho, really psycho, maybe.
Yeah,
It
maybe.
just seems like, honestly, a perfect fit, really. Like, it seems like to me that having BYU and Utah and the Holy War in a pod, it just makes too much sense. Seems like it's trending that way more every day.
Yeah. I think that we're running out of options.
Yeah.
I think the next question you might ask is, what is the next step? What are the options that could be presented? And at this point, outside of the schools that have been talked about moving, Oregon and Washington are kind of wild cards at this point, because if the Big Ten needs those late window games to fulfill those November games at night now, evidently Kevin Warren promised night games. USC and UCLA aren't going to do it. That's 2 schools. You need more schools to create opportunities for games. So basically, for them to keep the money that they haven't even signed the contract yet, but let's just assume they signed the contract, to keep those games viable, they need more inventory. And the only way they're going to get more inventory is if they have more schools available. There's no other schools available in the Pacific time zone. That's the only way you can add more time to their calendar. So if anything, I think Oregon and Washington are more attractive at a 50% valuation. They come in, they make $50 million, still more than they're making anywhere else. And they're immediately viable in the Big Ten. I could see Petiti doing something like that, because it's a mess right now.
It's a huge mess. And I'm thinking that Oregon and Washington, I'm seriously thinking this. They would go into the Big Ten almost for free. Forget $50 million.
I agree.
I mean,
Yeah.
we're talking about like a long-term, almost like a 50 to 100-year decision.
Right.
Like how low could you go really? And like, I mean, if you're Oregon, maybe Phil Knight funds your program for a couple of years.
Right.
Like, I mean,
Well, we've been told by how many
financially, it doesn't even
people,
matter, right? Like, I mean,
right?
at least if it's only for a few years.
Yeah, for the last 11 months, the big knock against Big 12 fans is they didn't understand the Pac-12. They didn't understand the history and the nostalgia and all these other things. Like, the whole world is stupid to the way they do things. And only in the Pacific Northwest do they understand that nobody needs money. All they need is their pageantry and their history, and that's will get them through. And they've often not talked about money, but they've talked about exposure, and they want to play with the big boys and all these other things. Well, now is their chance to put up or shut up. If they go to the Big Ten and basically say, we'll come in at almost a net zero, just pay our costs, our
Right.
travel and everything else, and we'll do that for 3 or 4 years, and then we'll be 100% vested. Why wouldn't they do that? Because they're coming in free, and if the expense is they add a little bit more travel, I realize the teams in the Midwest don't want to travel out west, but come on, the way football is going, it's going to be across the continent, and there's no reason you don't bring in those schools at a very reduced rate.
Right. And like, and it's not going to be $0, of course. I mean,
Right, of
there's
course
no
it's
way the
not.
Big Ten
Yeah.
would slap anyone in the face with that, right?
Right,
Um,
right.
I mean, if
I
it's
was just trying to emphasize a point.
for
The
sure, yeah, it
dollar,
makes
the
sense. I mean,
yeah,
honestly, that's probably the truth, right?
I think so.
I mean, you'd have to imagine it's probably 30 million or above, maybe 40 million, 50 million, perhaps, or just as accretive financially, so everyone's making money, when they're coming in,
Right, right. And
and
then
they'll
eventually it'll all be right. It'll all be fixed and equal.
they'll be in. They'll be in the
Yeah.
Big P2, and really, that's all that matters. And I can tell you, and Ute fans want the Big Ten bad. Like,
Well,
despite
sure.
the Big Ten causing all these issues with the pack, with USC and
Right.
UCLA, poaching those two, and now the stuff with Oregon and Washington, possibly Stanford, like all the instabilities created. I mean, I think the Big Ten's kind of behind everything with the Pac-12's problems, really. I mean, like, and talk about like not being able to get a TV deal. And in my view, I think the Big Ten's uh, the hovering nature of the Big Ten is part of that reason, because
Well,
there's
sure.
non-committal, right? And even back 6-8 months ago when ESPN was at the table in the negotiation period with the PAC, there was a contract there that the PAC didn't sign because they thought they could get more. But I'm just curious if that really was the case. Like, was that the case, or really was it because Oregon and Washington, Stanford, Cal were non-committal at that time?
I think there have been multiple reports out from Andrew Marchand. There's been reports out from ESPN and Fox, reporters that cover the length and breadth of college football, that have said that the deal that they offered to the Pac-12 and they turned down, Yormark picked up the phone and accepted.
Yeah.
So he didn't hesitate. He didn't have egos in the room. The egos that were in the room at the time didn't exist anymore because they were going to the SEC. So all the Big Ten, all the Big 12 wanted to do was stay together, and that gave them the ability to do that. And I wholeheartedly believe that the ego of, again, the Pac-12, again, they're hung by their own news basically. They didn't want to sign something that was Big 12 money. How often was it condescending by, I don't even want to name all the bad actors on Pac-12 media, but you and I both know who they are. And
Right.
between the condescension and the talk about truck stop conferences, I mean,
Yeah.
there's going to be a 30 for 30 that's going to cover all this one day. Maybe you and I'll make it, but it's going to cover all of the things that were done wrong for the Pac-12. And you're going to see about 10 or 12 stage gates that have come along and passed that they had opportunities to save themselves and chose not to.
Was it ego or options? I mean, that's
I
the
think
thing
they
that
had,
I think about all the time. Was it ego or options? Maybe a little bit of both. But like, if you're
sure.
Oregon and Washington 8 months ago when that deal with ESPN was on the table, are you going to sign that? Right? Like, what are you really going to sign that if you feel like the big might be calling again, that they weren't done?
But
I mean,
see, who cares? You can't. That's the difference between Yormark and Kliavkov. Yormark decided instead of waiting to be acted on, he was going to act. Whereas Klyavkov kept saying, "Oh, we're waiting. We're waiting. Well, what the hell are you waiting for, man? At the end of the day, take control of your own destiny." There was the whole fiasco with the University of California education system, and were they going to keep UCLA in? Was there going to be a fee that was going to make it so they didn't want to go to the Big Ten? All that nonsense. Klyavkov could have taken the bull by the horns. And honestly, this is one thing I agree with Tony Altomore. Even if he had all the power in the world, the Pac-12 presidents are not going to get pushed around by some commissioner. They already got burned by one recently, and they weren't going to let another one tell them what to do. So he could have come to them hat in hand with the best deal ever in the history of mankind. And if they didn't feel like it met their expectations, they weren't going to sign it.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Yeah. I just keep going back to this thought that it's impossible for George K to get a deal done if you've got members that really aren't invested in the long term.
Right. That's true.
So is it really? Yeah, I mean, I guess George K is not a great leader to encourage everybody and rally behind the cause to sign the PAC contract. But when you've got multiple schools looking at options beforehand, it's really tough. The Big 12 and Yormark, they weren't in that situation because the Big wasn't calling.
Right.
They weren't pursuing like a Kansas, an Oklahoma State or a BYU.
Right.
There's so much smoke around this Oregon and Washington that there's something here. So I really have to imagine at the end of the day that this was about an impossible task for George K to get a deal done because of those dynamics going on really in the background. And I just don't know what deal Oregon and Washington at that time would have signed. What if it was for $50 million at that time, and rather than like around $30 million? Would they have signed that? Maybe, maybe not. I think the need for them and the want to get in the Big Ten outweighed anything.
Right. Well, I think that's very fair. Hey, how do you feel, Ute, about open it up? We have 3 people watching right now.
Yeah.
I put the link out. They could click on it and join us.
Come in. Let's talk about this.
All right, let's get active here. Let's see if we can get anybody to actually participate. I just posted it in the messages. I'm hoping you guys can join us, and let's make this more interactive.
Absolutely.
It's not just us talking. We want to hear from you.
I want to hear your thoughts. Do you agree? Do you disagree? Everyone's welcome here.
Let's see here. We got Devil Frog that's given us a comment. Big 12 Business Summit started today. Yeah, I saw that. I forwarded that link on. It's just another example of Yormark running circles around everybody else. He says, I hope Buc-ee's become a sponsor of the Truck Stop Conference. That would be great. I think that's a great sponsorship. I'd love to have Truck Stop Conference as a sponsor.
Hey, Bomber, let me ask you an honest question, because I know that we're kind of making light of this, but
sure.
Are Big 12 fans, are they upset about that? Like that tagging Truck Stop Conference and everything? Was that from a PAC perspective, I don't really know, because it's kind of just joked around with, but really, was that a slap?
I don't think anybody cares. Who the hell cares if it's Truck Stop Conference, not Truck Stop Conference? You're cashing checks and you're playing football. I think that's all anybody in the Midwest wants to do. There's no special needs there. If you have any questions, please also type them in the comments, and we can answer those as well. We can move on to the next topic if you want to, Ute, and then we'll see if anybody visits us.
Yeah, going back to, is the Pac-12 dead on arrival? I mean, if the goal is to get 50% linear and ESPN's out, I mean, what are you really going to do? I think that it's big trouble. You have to bring ESPN back into the fold.
Right.
I don't want to embarrass myself or anything, but just to illustrate this point, I literally for another show, I actually created a Old English poem about the importance of ESPN with the PAC contract. And I wrote this 2 months ago, Bomber.
Okay.
I was thinking ESPN and the PAC were going to get something done.
Okay.
I'd read this off, and I'd write out in the sunset, but an Old English, like King Arthur style poem.
Wow. Okay.
Ready to read that involved ESPN, but with ESPN out, I don't think I'm going to be able to read that. I'm not happy about it.
How long is it?
It's 30 seconds to a minute.
30 seconds. If you want to read it, go ahead. We're still waiting for people to click on the link and join us.
You know what?
Right questions.
Yeah, you know what? I can read this. Let me pull it up for a second, okay?
That's great.
And in the meantime, I want to know what the Big 12 perspective is.
Oh, we got somebody
what's up,
joining
Robert?
us.
How you doing?
Robert Franz. Hopefully he's able to get in here.
Hey,
Hello, Robert.
Hey,
So first you have to tell
all right,
us who
doing
you
fine.
with. You with the Pac-12 in Utah or BYU in the Big 12?
Robert's an FSU fan. He's Florida
Oh, I
State.
love FSU. Let's talk ACC.
FSU flat fan.
Okay, well, let's go.
Yeah, and I'm not loyal to Florida State, but I'm from originally Pennsylvania, so I know the Big Ten. When mentioning
Okay.
about the Big Ten, it's my specialty because I come from Pennsylvania, from Big Ten
All right.
country.
Yeah.
So it's
Robert,
like when you guys talk about the, huh?
How,
go ahead.
How are you seeing this then? How are you seeing the Pac-12 contract situation with ESPN?
Well, the contract issue, truthfully, they made a mistake just sitting on their hands, pretty much. That's what they did. It's pretty much they sat on their hands for way too long. They didn't like what the deal they were given with the $9 million per team. Like I said before, that's the best offer they got because the first offer they never even met the first offer until they pulled that away and gave that offer. It's like, what can they really do? Because Apple TV is not going to really give them enough of reach to the masses, and then you also consider after that the CW is not a great one because that's only regional.
Right.
I looked at the numbers for Apple alone. Most of it's international because the soccer that's even crazier when you consider that.
Yeah, you're right.
It makes it more.
The subs for Apple is not high enough.
So it's like this is the worst time for the pack to come up for a media deal.
It really is. Yeah.
It's a terrible time for the pack, and it doesn't help that the networks don't seem to really want to support the pack either, based on how the pack is a regional conference and everything's moving towards a national conference.
And networks are in a buy too. When you look at other people that are looking for media deals. Yeah, when you're looking at it from other media deals, there's multiple different things out there. You have two wrestling promotions that are fighting for a media deal. You also have the NBA. You have all this at once. It's the worst storm to be in if you're a college conference trying to find a TV deal in general.
It's no good.
Any media deal right now is trouble. So now give us some insight. I want to know what your thoughts are about Florida State and Clemson and North Carolina. Is that going to hold together?
Yeah.
Robert, did you hear me?
I think most likely they'll try to find a way out because I know definitely Clemson, Florida State, Miami, they all – yeah, I hear you. Yeah, I think personally it would be down to Miami for the pretty much the Magnificent Seven. They have guaranteed landing spots out of them. It's the other ones to move the needle. That once they absolve this conference, the only person that you really have to worry about is ESPN. Would the ACC have enough money to actually fight them leaving? I don't know 100%. Like the Fries and podcast even was talking about that. I think the most logical one that would actually fight would be the ACC over ESPN. ESPN would see it as saving money because they are losing money because of Disney being attacked from the state of Florida and also Comcast coming into the game now with them ones selling shares of Hulu back to Disney. It's like really they don't have the money to actually fight all this battles. They're better off to ESPN would say, forget it. We have the SEC. We can survive off the SEC and we can just let the ACC just fall apart. Let the ACC fight that battle.
Well, hey, so Robert, where do you want FSU to end up? Where's the best place for FSU to end up?
Logically, I would say, truthfully, I'd rather see them in the Big Ten because it gives them a chance so they don't have to worry about Alabama. I know some of the people in the fan base would love to go to SEC. I'm like, really? I don't think the Big Ten would would allow that pretty much. They will try to bargain with the SEC. If you're going to take Florida State, we're going to take Clemson instead. And we know the SEC wants Clemson. So they'll probably negotiate, okay, you take Clemson, we'll take FSU instead.
Right.
That's how I see how the Big Ten is.
Yeah, if FSU gets into the Big Ten, they're going to be a juggernaut. Seriously, that is the best landing spot for FSU, I think.
I don't know. The
I don't
question
disagree.
I have, the problem I have.
I
with,
agree.
Robert, the problem I have with having FSU there is just the proximity that it is to Florida. And why wouldn't you just take Miami and then end up leaving FSU, go to Big Ten?
Yeah, that's why I'm saying FSU to the Big Ten.
Oh,
I thought you said SEC. I apologize. I'm sorry.
That's all I do.
Miami might be a.
That's all right. It's all right.
Yeah. And they
I think Miami most likely go to the Big 12 because really, if you think about it, Miami is in an NFL stadium. They're in the same problem as Pitt in that because they both play in NFL stadiums right now.
Right.
So most likely the logical place would be the Big 12, because I know Miami wants to build their own stadium, but that's going to be a couple of years down the road. Until that's ready to go.
I would personally love to have Miami in the Big 12, but I don't know that they don't go to the SEC or the Big 10.
If Miami got in the Big 12, that would be the score of all scores. That would be
the Big 12.
Right.
That would be massive. Seriously.
All right. Yeah, the only thing I think of about it when I think about Miami is the thing with Miami is I think with them playing in an NFL stadium really hurts them to the look for the Big 10 and probably the SEC.
It does.
That's the only bad thing about with Miami. If Miami was in there playing in the Orange Bowl, I think they would be perfectly fine. They'll be fighting over Miami for that for them between the SEC and the ACC. Not the ACC, the SEC and Big 10.
Right.
But that's the same problem with Pitt. Pitt has the same problem. The Big 10 won't want them because they're in a NFL stadium. But the Big 12, why not? They are decent brands.
Yeah.
Sure, absolutely.
Well,
Robert.
Sorry, go ahead, Bomber.
No, I was just going to say thank you for joining us, Robert. You're our first live guest. We appreciate you doing it.
Thanks, Robert.
Yeah, it's good to actually see who the person you talk to on Twitter all the time.
It is.
Keep bouncing those ideas.
Robert. And please subscribe and keep coming back. We have this one and awesome. That's fantastic. Love to have you and please let us know in the comments.
Yeah, you always see me in Schwim's discussions all the time on Twitter too. You see me there. When Schwim said he was coming on your guys' program, I was like, okay, I'll watch, and I enjoyed it.
Well, I'm glad to hear it. Greg is a fantastic guy, and he really helped us out a lot.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah, me and Greg have great conversations on Twitter. It's like because me and Greg, even though we're not that far apart, because you have to think I'm in Texas, he's in Oklahoma.
Right.
So it's like we tend to almost think alike because he's actually from the Big Ten also. He's from Indiana, while I was from Pennsylvania. So we both know similarly how the Big Ten's going to act. Because it's a wacky beast. Yeah, but I compare it to the mob pretty much in my case.
I like that. We're going to start using the Big Ten and the mob in the same sentence.
Oh, yeah, but look where their headquarters is. It's in Chicago.
It's true.
Who was in Chicago? The mob. So it's like it fits perfectly. Even if they were in New York City or even Philadelphia, it would still be like it's the mob.
Right. All right. Well, thanks again, Robert, and we'll see you soon. I'm going to have to – we'll see you. I'm going to have to see if Flugar will get us his clap at outros.
Oh, yeah, we need something like that.
Yeah, he's so much more flashy than we are, though.
Yep. Thanks again, and call in again, and anybody else, call in. Let's chat here.
Yeah, what's your next item on your hit list?
I think we should talk a little bit more about the Bigs problem, right?
Okay. I just wanted to get this. This is an answer from you from Devil Frog about the truck stop conference.
Yeah. I get that. I mean, I wouldn't be happy if someone called my conference truck stop conference, but I would own it too, kind of like Big 12 fans have. That was stupid, guys. Big 12 fans, that was a stupid comment. Yeah. there's some idiot fans out there. Not all Pack fans are like that. Not all
Right.
Ute fans are like that. There's some though. You get them in every fan base.
Okay. Very good. What's next?
Yeah, let's talk about the big problem here, like the new news here about the Kevin Warren and how Kevin Warren in his departure,
Right.
he's causing all kind of problems with committing on the NBC game, and of a vast slew of problems. And what really it boils down to, it's going to cost the Big Ten teams about $5 million per year. This is getting a lot of run today,
Right.
a lot of discussion across the land and everything. And I really wanted to get your take on it, Bomber. Like, how do you see that? How big a deal is this for the Big Ten?
I think it, while it's a headliner for a day, I think it means nothing in the overall. You're talking a small percentage compared to the billions of dollars in total revenue for multiple years that they're currently signed up for, the richest in the land. So yeah, I mean, $5 million to BYU and Utah would be a lot. $5 million to a school that's going to be making 75, 80, probably not a ton. So how will it affect their day-to-day running of their business? They already run pretty much at a loss anyway. They make a ton of money, but spend it on recruiting and travel and other things. So I think it's a headliner for one thing. I think it makes Kevin Warren look like a really shoddy businessman. But I read several comments from Bob Thompson today, and he's like, this isn't unheard of. They sketch out rules on the back of a napkin or an envelope, like George Kliavkoff said, and they make these contracts are in good frame, and then when it comes down to flushing out the details, this is usually what happens. The only thing that he called attention to is they signed the deal, or they agreed to the deal last summer. This should have come out over the winter. There's no reason it should have taken this long to get there, and that was because the commissioners presidents did not trust Kevin Warren to do any business before he actually left for that job with the Bears. So they lost a ton of time, and now Petitti's going to have to scramble to try to get that done to the start of the 2023 season.
Yeah, I agree with you. It's a nothing burger. It's a nothing burger, really. It's not going to matter.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
like the commitment for those night games, 5 night games that Warren had committed to, that
Right.
teams didn't want to do, especially in late November. That's the issue, is the cold, right? Not
Right.
playing teams in the cold. Like when I'm thinking about this, like if we're going to have home playoff games, aren't those games going to be housed in cold weather at those stadiums anyway? Like,
most of them, yeah, they are.
How big a deal is this? Like, really? I mean, like this, it just seems like, again,
Well,
a nothing burger.
Well, look at the SEC. They never leave the region to play games, right?
Well, Florida's coming to Utah.
Well, one, and Arkansas was here for them last year at BYU, but very rarely do they leave the Southeast. And they win, and it's not an accident that those two things coordinate. Them doing well is directly tied to their scheduling and where they play their games. And the Big Ten wants the same type of flexibility for their high-profile, schools. They don't want Michigan and Ohio State to come out to California and to play in a Thursday road game at night and put them at a disadvantage from possibly winning, because they know they want schools to make it all the way to the end and be in the CFP. Those games, they're going to be earlier in the year, and they're probably not going to be at nighttime. So I'm not sure how they can. They need to dress up their inventory. The only way they can fix that is to bring in more schools.
So the inventory in your mind, is that's the issue?
At this point, it is. I didn't think it was 3 days ago, but now that we know that they have this problem with the big names don't want to play these late games in November, there's only one way to fix that, and that's to add schools.
Yeah, if they refuse to do it. Yeah, if they refuse to play it, or else you can just make them play it. I mean, you are getting paid $100 million per school, pretty much. Isn't it time just to play a cold weather night game without going to the West Coast to do it?
Well, but they're running out of options to actually play the actual time slots, though. The problem is NBC was told they were going to get something that the contract now is saying they're not getting. That's why NBC is getting money back, is because they're basically saying, you told us we were going to get a championship game. You told us we were going to get all these other games in November. Now we find out that no, you already sold those to Fox. So they need to fix this and remedy it. And the only way that I can see that, I'm no genius, but just reading what I read on Twitter today between Bob Thompson and then some of the media folks, it's like the quickest answer to that problem would be to add inventory.
Add inventory, meaning add Oregon and Washington.
Add schools, whoever they are. Yeah, just places where people can go play games in the Pacific time zone.
Yeah. Bomber, I want to talk about the PAC's long-term viability. Okay,
sure.
Let's just play, like, theoretically, let's just play like the hypothetical game and say, okay, what if ESPN comes around, the PAC gets a contract done, and for the next 5 years.
Okay.
As a PAC fan, as a Utes fan, I think to myself all the time, like, what's next? Like, say the contract gets signed, say you beat out the Big 12, best case scenario. Who knows if that happens? And plus, you get even your linear exposure. Like, I have a hard time seeing the PAC conference survive in the longer term, not just the short term, but in the longer term.
Right.
Given these uncommitted schools, given the regionality of the conference, given the fact that ESPN, Fox seem to almost be, trying to ruin the PAC in some ways by not giving them maybe fair market offers for their TV rights, about the orchestrating the LA schools move. There's just a slew of things.
Well, but what's fair? Let's answer that question first. What's fair market value? Isn't fair market value what somebody will pay you for something?
True.
Isn't the market whatever somebody's willing to pay you for it?
True.
Why would ESPN bid against itself? Why would Fox bid against itself?
Relationships.
They don't. I'm telling you, that doesn't matter.
It does matter because you're talking about business with
media
conferences
partners.
and schools.
No, not with conferences and schools. I'm talking the media partners. I'm talking ESPN, Fox. They're out to make money. They're not out to make. If it was all relationships, USC and UCLA don't leave for the Big Ten. Well, if all we're talking about is relationships, and it's not money, it's not, anything like that, then there's no reason to break the PAC up, and they're still playing in the Pac-12.
I don't think relationships are everything, but relationships, just like in real life and business, are super important. Even if you're a conference with a media partner, even if you're a school to school.
But you can have a great relationship with somebody, but not want to do business with them.
You could, but like the fact that you did business with them in the past, you were paying them more in the past. They thought you had an offer on the table.
But they're not paid them more in the past. This is their next media deal. They've never paid more than they've offered.
PAC is getting paid more right now at the moment with USC and UCLA in conference than they will, based on the figures talked about in this next media deal. If it's 20 or 25 $million, it's going to be less than they're making now.
Of course, they lost their flagship 2 programs, just like the Big 12 did. So it's not the same. You can't say it was before and now is current.
Well, how about this though? How about when the offer was on the table for $32 million and PAC refused it? So I mean, you won't give that offer yet. You're going to lowball them with a lot less.
Well, wait a second. They sold those times though. All that inventory went to the Big 12.
Yeah, a lot of it did.
Most of it. The only time that they keep talking about in Pac-12 is after dark window,
right?
Which nobody but the Pac-12 cares about because everybody else is in bed by the time those.
Those games get over $1 million viewers per game, right?
Yeah, but if you can get 2-3 million with the same people, but you put them in a different window, doesn't that make more sense?
Yeah, I get what you're saying. And
all I'm saying is the relationship's important. But they're not going to bid against themselves. Amazon doesn't. They're losing money on the NFL package, and they had a great year this last year. They're losing money. Apple's losing money on the MLS. These vendors are not going to bid against themselves, especially with the economy the way it is.
I just think to myself, like, you as a network, you're trying to do business. You're trying to do business in the best way you can. You're trying to make money. You're trying to make profit.
Right.
So here's the problem though. Like, when maybe as a Pac fan, maybe I'm biased and feel like the conference is being lowballed. That's probably what's going on here, just because where the money was talked about, where the expectation was, and now where it is. But I
Right.
feel like as a network, you understand what's going on right now in the landscape. I mean, with NIL and everything else, like you basically know you're ruining a conference if you pay them so little.
Right.
So relationships, I do think that matters, having
Okay.
relationships, because in the long-term perspective, you never know what happens if the Pac flips things around and all of a sudden in 10, 15 years, it doesn't look likely. What if that happens and all of a sudden they're a big player? They don't want to do business with ESPN anymore because they remember they got screwed by ESPN in the contract. I'm just saying relationships do matter in this game too. So that's just something to think about without just throwing like a $9 million per school figure. That's basically AAC money. Like, let's be honest about that. That's ridiculous. How the heck are these programs supposed to compete? Like, you got to protect your investment too.
Say they gave him the money. Say out of nowhere, they got a white knight funding, and ESPN all of a sudden found the money to match exactly the Big 12 games. Let's just assume that happens. Inventory, they stay at 10 teams because if they bring on new players, that's going to lower their overall. So they stay at 10 teams. They're a viable conference. They're still in the college football playoff at least through 2026. And say all that is a given, and that all happens exactly the way that you're kind of picturing it with a relationship. At the end of the day, there's only so many windows to put those games on for linear. And that's really the biggest problem that the Pac-12 has. The contract that the Big 12's actually signed, it actually says that it can't be any more than 30% linear, which means you'd have to have the inverse, or the converse would have to be true for the Pac-12. That means 70% would be streamed.
So when we're talking about linear, and I think, let me repeat back that.
Fox and ESPN.
Fox, so we're talking about Big Fox, right?
Yeah,
Fox,
I guess if you want to call them that, sure. Yeah, the one you can turn on your TV and get it from a digital.
Yeah, so when you can put it like an antenna up and you can watch the game.
Right.
Table, right?
That's right. So they're able to, that's going to happen 7 out of 10 times in the Big 12. It's going to happen 3 out of 10 times for the Pac-12.
I would have to imagine like that the Big 12 contract has to include the ESPN2, the FS1s, and like the other slots.
Well,
not just
it's the family of networks. It's not ESPNU, but it is at ESPN Plus. It's ESPN2 and ESPN.
Yeah.
So those are all in standard cable packages, though.
Yeah.
So either that or you can watch them on YouTube TV. Everybody knows how to find those things. Pac-12 is trying to not only get people to convert to a new way of receiving their news and information, but they're doing it on a whole different band of communication. You know, I love Roku. I have all the services that we've talked about on our shows, Fox, ESPN, all the premium services. I could watch whatever I want to watch whenever I wanted to watch it. The two that are the worst to deal with are Apple, which that program can't seem to run 30 seconds without stuttering or something. Right. If you have it, you know what I mean. And the other one that's really difficult is Amazon. And it's not because Amazon is bad service, it's because they have so many offerings on their packages. They haven't declared whether you're going to have to pay for them or not. If I have to pay a surcharge on top of having Amazon, which is already $130 a year,
yep.
I'm sorry, I'm already paying, for the advanced service. I'm not going to pay $100 to also watch those games if I don't have to. Now, will people do it in a pinch? You and I would do it.
Yeah.
But mom and pop, my dad,
yeah.
He's going to come over and watch games at my house. He's retired. He can't afford to do a subscription like that.
It's getting a little absurd too with the subscriptions, for sure. Where we're going and where we will go with the pack, and
right. And ESPN's even said this last week, they were going to direct to consumer. Yeah. They're going to make it so you can buy it ad hoc and just stream ESPN, which you can't do right now. You can only get it on cable. You can now stream ESPN online. I'm not sure when they're going to turn that on, but that's their next delivery method.
Yeah, and they're going to have both cable and that.
Right. You're going to be able to pay for it all a card. I'm not sure what the pricing is going to be, but I already
want to pay.
Well, I already pay for ESPN Plus through the Disney package, So if they just throw ESPN on top of that for say $10, $12, I'd pay it. It's better than paying $70 in a cable package.
For sure.
Because all I watch is sports and Vanderpump. So if I can find
Vanderpump Rules.
yeah, right? I get that on my Peacock subscription. So I'm able to watch Peacock, Vanderpump online. I don't even need cable package anymore if I can have ESPN a la carte. Let's see here. We got a couple comments. Hi, all just came over from Cody's Locked on Big 12.
Hey,
Heidi ho. Welcome. I love Cody's show. Cody's a stud, Mike. He's a great guy, and we're going to have him on this show fairly soon, I hope. Please subscribe, hit that notification so you know when we're up. And for those that are just joined, I'm posting a link. Go Pokes and BYU. I like that. This link that I've been copying into the chat, if you guys get on your smartphone or your computer, your laptop, and click on that link, you can actually join me and Wild Ute, and we'd love to hear what you're thinking. Also, you can post questions online just in the comments.
I want to know what the folks think about this ESPN contract situation. Like, is it as debilitating as I seem to think it is, or is this just another smoke and mirrors in people's thoughts? That's the only rebuttal to it, I think.
I think it's a great question, and I don't know that you and I will be able to answer it. It has to be answered by each individual user.
Time will answer that.
Time will answer it. That's right. That's right. Unless it goes to Netflix, then they don't release any of their viewing data, so we wouldn't know if it was successful or not.
Yeah, I heard you know what, like with the PAX TV situation, I've made us think about this before, but I'm just hoping that the CW is not involved. Bomber, the CW.
Tell me why do you? Okay, so is this the whole truck stop thing? You're caught up in the name and not the delivery method? I'm being dead serious.
I heard a story from this weekend about a Live Golf tournament. It was actually a fairly well-attended tournament in Tulsa. And the CW picked it up and was airing it. I don't know what kind of ratings it got, but right when it got juicy, like when it got all hot and heated and everything, and the golf was in its final round, some of the CW regional affiliates decided to move over to like a True Blood episode or some other type of other type of show.
Oh, I hadn't heard that
from sporting events. So I just, you know what? There's all kind of baggage in my mind's eye with that. And plus, that's just more evidence that, like, what the heck are we doing? If we're going to the CW, that cannot be an option to me. Like, that just cannot be an option.
I don't know. I don't know what you guys are going to do, because if they sign a deal, it's going to be with a provider. It's obvious ESPN's out again, and they're announced out. It's not one of these things we just assumed in the background. They actually came out and said, yeah, we're done. Come to us if you want to talk pennies on the dollar, but we don't want to talk to you anymore. We're not going to negotiate against ourselves. They're not stupid. And that's what they told the world. So
will the CW even pay anything?
Like, do they have money for sports?
I don't even know if they've got money.
I don't have any idea.
Let's be honest about this. If ESPN's out, like, what would you do? If you're George K, what do you do at this point in time to save this conference? Like, let's be real honest about this. I don't really know the solution here.
I'd be cashing out my retirement plan is what I'd be doing about right now.
No, come on.
He's not going to have a job. I'm dead serious. They're gonna send him to the train station as they do on Yellowstone. He's gonna be just one day. He's no longer. Are we even sure he's even alive? He's kind of like Putin at this point, isn't he? I mean, when was the last time anybody actually heard him speak? He's a Muppet of some sort. I can almost swear that I saw strings last time. It was one of those still pictures that he uses for all their press releases. George Klyavkov, I actually think might be a Muppet.
He's not a Muppet. I actually talked with him at a Utah tailgate last year.
Okay. So he's a real person. Right, oh, hey, well, there you go. You got that going for you.
He's real. He's a good guy in person, but I don't like this contract situation here.
And I don't know. He made some really poor choices, and he was hamstrung by the leadership of the conference. So, it is what it is. I want to know. I'm going to ask you a question, and all Ute fans, if you're not already following Wild Ute, you should be following. The guy is very balanced and reasonable. He also is very passionate and bleeds red, and he's your advocate. So if you're not putting in comments and calling into the show because you want to talk Ute stuff, that's on you, because we want to talk about Ute stuff.
For sure.
So,
what do you fans think about this? Yeah.
right. Yeah, we want to know what you guys are thinking out there. The subscription question I thought was wonderful. Do you guys want to pay for 5 more subscriptions to watch a game? I don't know what you do about that. But Utah, let's just assume the Pac-12 blows up and Utah comes to the Big 12, because we know the Big 10 doesn't have the money to bring them in, at least right now. What is the attitude going to be of the Utah fans?
There's going to be a small contingent of fans that will be excited. A moderate contingent of fans that are going to be just sad because of the run in the pack.
Right.
And they're still kind of in denial right now. And then there's going to be a small contingent of fans that are going to squawk, right? And then throw that truck stop garbage out and everything. So you're going to get a mixed bag of different responses. But I think that the moderate crowd is going to be the biggest sect of the Utah fan base. And I think that Utah fans, if we end up in the Big 12, will jump on board. We're still going to sell out Rice-Eccles Stadium. We'll still be passionate. Right. We'll travel to your stadium. Just give us some time to really kind of get used to the new normal here. What Ute fans aren't talking about are the inherent advantages of Utah being in the Big 12. Okay, so Utah going to the Big 12 opens up, and everyone knows this, the Texas recruiting pipeline. But what folks probably don't know that much is Utah hits that already hard. Utah recruits out of Texas. That's like the second or third largest state already in the pipeline. So all of a sudden, if you have a natural way to get into Texas by playing Texas Tech, Baylor, Houston, and TCU, I think that really is going to lift as far as recruiting goes. And plus, like, what's intriguing too as a Ute fan, there was a small pipeline of recruits coming from Florida too. And with UCF over in Florida, that could open some more Florida players. So I think that Utah would find a lot of success in the Big 12, personally. And if Utah found success, fans would jump on board. Fans would learn to love the Big 12, after they kind of get over the fact that the Pac is no more, which is tough. It's really tough for Ute fans. But there's going to be some small pullers on both the sides, some really happy and some that are squawking. So that's the response to your question.
And I think that's reasonable. And every Utah fan I've ever met is exactly that. I've lived in Utah since '97, and I don't own anything Utah. And we talk trash at times, either at work or on the basketball court or whatever. Yeah. But I've never once run into one that I didn't think was highly intelligent and really represented the school well. So I agree with you. I think the silent majority will take over. They'll be as loyal as BYU will be for the Big 12, if not more. Right. They'll have the greatest advocates out here on the west side that they can hope for.
No doubt about it. And until then, it's going to be interesting because a lot of Ute fans are still hoping the Pac survives.
Right.
Totally get it. Pac's treated us so well. It's fun playing schools like Washington, Oregon, and USC. It really is. It's been quite a ride. A lot of them seem to be kind of waking up, but they haven't fully waken up to realize that this ride seems like it's ending. Definitely with the LA schools gone, that's ending. That was the most fun of all. The big excitement game, in the Pac conference. And I'll tell you what, even next year, if the Pac survives, it's going to be a reality check for all Utah fans not playing USC anymore. And that's going to sting, even if everything else stabilizes. I mean, I think that Utah could still find a lot of success in the Pac, just because we've got the infrastructure built. We know what we're doing here. If we can figure out NIL, and that's one thing that this channel really wants to promote, really, is how can we support these student athletes with NIL? And how can we get folks to support that too? Because really, in this new era of college football, NIL is massive. Right. It's massive for all schools, and that's BYU, Utah included, all Pac and Big 12 schools too. But Utah's they'll be successful in the Pac if it survives. They'll be one of the best teams if it survives. But I think that the move over to the Big 12, they'd find success too, just as much success possibly. And again, it's exciting as a Ute fan thinking about being in a pod or a division with the Cougars and having that last game be the Holy War. right? I mean,
Exactly.
the biggest
Yeah.
game, that would be the biggest game on the schedule. It would mean everything. It would really rejuvenate a lot of the fan bases here too, right? And like it cause a lot of excitement. And what I love about the Big 12 too is that I think that the Big 12 would feature the Holy War game like crazy, like buku, right?
Yep.
Whereas ESPN in the past, when you were independent, we were in the pack, didn't really get a lot of play. Not a lot of
No.
advertisement, not a lot of buzz. But I
No.
think that the Big 12 with your mark, he would light a fire. And so there'd be some serious heat for that rivalry game. And it would be super exciting.
There's
So,
a rumor he's going to start a college game day type table. I saw this on an off 247 board. I can't quote it or anything, but basically it was what ESPN is doing with college game day. There's no reason the Big 12 couldn't have something similar. And you imagine that traveling desk goes to TCU, Baylor, Oklahoma State, and BYU. West Virginia, if we have that Cincinnati or Central Florida game. I mean, there's some really big games that would be cool to have that sort of feature to it. And that last game of the year being in Utah, that would be amazing. That if they did it on Thanksgiving, that would be even better.
Definitely. Yeah, and I guess like another thought here, and maybe like another dream from a Ute fan, given like the current landscape. I would love for all the Pac-12 teams to come over and merge with the Big 12. I know that's not realistic now.
Right.
Probably, but I mean that sounds like a little slice of heaven right now, given the current state of things. Just
I would love it. Let's get to some
Oregon States, right?
Right. I would love Oregon and Washington State to be in a big time league. I hate thinking of them going to the Mountain West.
And plus, remaining some of and keeping some of the culture too from like these Pac schools.
I agree with you.
Remnant, maybe a division of like the old Pac with the Big 12 teams. I mean, it just seems pretty exciting. If that could ever happen, it's probably a fat chance, but that's some dreaming out here, right?
Well, I wouldn't put anything past your mark. If he finds out the ACC is not going anywhere for another 5-10 years, why wait? Yeah. We'll have to see, though. Let's get some comments in here. Mike Rayner, another comment. If I'm Georgia, I'm dyeing my hair, changing my name, and moving away. Yeah, I think that's sort of been what people have been saying. Devil Frog says George Clef's a real boy, just like Pinocchio.
Devil Frog, yeah, he's a real guy, believe it or not. I've seen him in person. I've seen him.
Right, exactly. You shook hands with him, right? He was a real boy. Blake Phillips, I love the channel. Thank you very much. Please subscribe, hit that like button, and let your friends know about it. We're glad to have you here. We appreciate being in the league. BYU very much does. I hope you know, and we can, all the fans have exhibited how much we appreciate the Big 12. And we're going to be your staunchest supporters. And unless we're playing on Saturdays, we're going to be doing the banner for the league. So it'll be good to have BYU in it, but it also will be great to have Florida, Cincinnati, and Houston. So we're really looking forward to it.
BYU is such a no-brainer for the Big 12 for the longest time. I can't believe it took as long as it did, honestly. I mean, I think BYU is going to have quite a bit of success in the Big 12.
I hope so. We'll find out. There's some guys that have us winning 3 games, or some people that have us winning 8.
It's going to be a struggle this year.
We'll find out. I don't know. I keep hearing everybody say it's going to be a struggle. I don't know. Maybe because we've been playing big-time schools for a while now. So
Mike, so the Big 12 needs the Holy War. Oh, yeah. I mean, it would be dynamite.
Right.
The Big 12 needs the backyard brawl.
Yeah. That's, oh, boy, wasn't that the truth? That's absolutely true. Pitt coming in would be fantastic.
That'd be awesome. And Yormark's the kind of guy that probably structure like these rivalry games, like during, different weeks of the season you wouldn't think about to get a lot of PR on them. Like Yormark, I mean, the guy is so creative. I mean, I think that he could really do a lot for with these rivalries and grow, the Big 12 brand. If Pac schools and AC schools came over, it would be a pretty strong conference.
Very good. I agree 100%. I'll put out this one more time. I just posted the link. If you want to join the show, leave a comment and we'll talk to you for a little bit. If your opinions matter and you want us to know about them, please let us know or leave comments like we've been reading as we've gone on. Another comment here from Blake Phillips. Oh, here you go. You read that one.
Hey, Blake, I was fully against Utah and the arrogance until I watched you guys the past couple weeks. The Holy War would be great. We need rivalries and solid fan bases. Oh, yeah.
It's working.
Okay, brother. Yeah, I
Ute,
mean,
it's
not all Ute
working.
fans, really face-to-face Ute fans are good people, right? Like,
Right.
it's just the stuff you see on social media.
It's almost like
Like,
Blake was in our very first call where you and I talked. What could we do? What could we possibly do? Isn't it? That's almost word for word. What do we do to make this better?
you know what?
And
Yeah, I mean, I get it. I mean, Ute fans have really caused a lot of strife with the Big 12, but really, like, I don't know. I mean, you guys experience it more than me as a Ute fan. I know there's a couple accounts out there that really take jabs and everything, but it's
right.
just one or two humans, right? Like in person, no Ute fans are going to treat you that way. Come on, like that's not going to happen. Like if Utah gets in the Big 12, I'll host all you guys for a tailgate. You come to Rice Eccles, you're tailgating with me, like for sure.
That would be a road trip. You come to Salt Lake, that's a great game. You go to Provo, it's a great game. You'll always do
Absolutely,
well
you got to
in
hit those
Utah.
places if it happens.
There's absolutely no doubt. All right, let's see. So you were going to say something before I interrupted you with that comment. Sorry
Yeah, I
about that.
really wanted to get okay from a Cougars perspective, a Big 12 perspective, but really the Cougar perspective, like with this ESPN contract, with Utah's situation. I just want to hear your thoughts, really, like where does Utah go? Like, what's your thoughts of this whole landscape? How do you see this impacting where the Utes land?
I think the only thing that's a timing issue right now is what happens with San Diego State,
Right.
and can the Pac-12 survive without bringing in San Diego State? That's been all over the board, whether they need them desperately or they can go without them and just run the 10 teams. They're much weaker if they stay as a 10-team conference. They're more apt to get picked apart, and basically the conference will probably cease to exist in 5 years without fortifying and bringing in some schools to make it strong again. But if I was Utah, I'd be wanting to get out first. I'd be wanting to be out ahead of it. I think any smart human being, you talk about humans, human beings can be loyal all they want, but at the end of the day, they have to feed their own constituencies. And
Right.
Utah has a very valid constituency up on the hill with a lot of solid educators, and they very much care not only about the conference that they're in, but they care about the standing and how their school is looked upon. And if it feels like it's beginning to be tarnished because they're continuing to drag this thing along, and nobody can tell me that this has been cherries on top of cake for the last 10 months, that everybody's just been happy that it's drug on this long. I don't buy that. I don't think any normal person would think that would be the case. So in my opinion, I think Utah's better off if they jump sooner than later. It gives them a seat on the bus.
Yeah.
I think eventually we'll end up with 3 conferences at 20. I don't think we'll go to 24. And if
Mhm.
that's the case, that means the Big 12 will have 12 teams. You pick up 4 from the Pac-12 and you pick up 4 from the ACC, and then you're 20 teams. And if Utah for some reason really prevaricates and wants to walk that middle road, which almost never wins, they could honestly get left out. I know you always shake your head when I say that, but there's only so many teams that are going to be accepted into these conferences. There's only so big they can get. And as we've seen, there's no charity out there right now. So if the charity play is just hope that all the other teams get gobbled up and they're the only option to get sucked into the Big Ten, I think that's extremely, you're playing dodgy football there. I don't think you should take that chance. That's just me.
So you're kind of thinking it's in the Utes' best interest to make the move first to the Big 12, then like
I
really
do.
soon, right? Yeah.
Yeah, I think that would be proactive, like your mark's been for the last year.
Yeah, like Devil at Frog here, 4 corners plus Big 12 equal mutually beneficial. Yeah, I mean the 4 corners are really natural fits. Like
Yeah,
ASU,
there's no other way to say it.
Colorado's already been there. Utah, I mean, it's
Right.
like it fit right in, and like Oregon State, Wazoo, they would fit right in too. But yeah, the 4 corners really would be pretty seamless, right? Like
If let's just consider, let's say they pick up 4 schools and they leave 4 as a reserve from the ACC, but the ACC doesn't blow up. At the next media window, which I believe is 30-31 for the Big 12, do they continue to hold those positions out, or do they then go and pick up a Washington State and Oregon State? Do they try to bring in Cal and Stanford? I don't think they'd come, but there's only going to be so many slots.
yeah.
What do you think happens at the next window?
It's all about your media evaluation.
Right.
It's really sad how that is, but like, hey, how much are you worth to a TV company, a
Right.
media company? That'll tell you who's going where. Seriously, it's that simple. Like, if you're worth 100 million somehow, then you're probably going to fit in the SEC or Big Ten.
Right.
If less than that, if it meets the $32 million mark, you're in the Big 12, and if you're less, then you're going to probably get left out at the end of the day. So leaving those spots open, and that's where I really fear for Oregon State and Wazoo. Like, what's the media value on them, right? I mean, like, we got great fans, like passionate fans, good people out there and stuff, and like they've been in the Pac conference for a long time. But I don't know if they meet that bar, even for the Big 12 and everything. So I'm not sure the Big 12 is ever really going to go pursue them. And plus, I mean, if they get left out this time around, the Four Corners go with less money, less exposure, they're going to fall off a little bit. There's no way they're going to be as strong in the future as they are now. So really, I sympathize with those guys for sure. So that's how I see it. It's really just a math game, evaluation math game. How much are you worth to a media company?
So do we end up here if Klyavkov doesn't hang up on Brett Yormark last July?
Do we end up like
do we end up here where we are today if Klyavkov actually takes that call from Brett Yormark and they talk about merging the two leagues?
Oh yeah, that was a big mistake too.
I
think it was a big mistake
because that would have brought in all 8 of your teams.
I think everyone realizes this. There are some Pac teams that will not come to the Big 12 though.
Right.
Stanford and Cal will not come to the Big 12 no matter what. Like I really just refuse. I just believe that. Like based on the cultural dynamic, based on like the wine and cheese club mentality, and really like I think to the biggest extent the political dynamic that goes with those schools in particular, that there would be some major clashes culturally, politically with some Big 12 schools.
Right.
So I just don't see any world where those two schools in particular would come over. I don't see that USC or UCLA would ever have jumped to the Big 12 either.
I'm not talking about. I'm talking about after. This was after they said they were leaving. So it would have just been the remaining 10 teams. It
would have been great in theory because you've got a lot of like schools, valuation-wise, some a little bit more than others, but nothing like outside of the realm.
Right.
Completely outlier. I just don't see like politically, culturally, a few of those schools just don't fit. They don't, and they're not going to fit. They're not going to fit 5 years and 10 years and 15 years.
So it doesn't matter then. We would have ended up here either way.
We would have ended up here anyway. Like as a Ute fan, as like somebody that could be in both of those cultures and fit in and thrive, I would have loved to see it. But it's just not reality. It wouldn't have been reality too.
Yeah, that's fair enough. Blake Phillips he's talking about collusion here. Reality is Fox wants this too. They can have the pro rata with ESPN, or that would be collusion. Writing's on the wall for Fox ESPN to want Big 12 to expand into Pac. I've said that for 9 months. I think the specifically ESPN and Fox, those two, they don't have a problem with the Pac disappearing because they can bring in schools that they want and leave the stuff off the schools they don't want to worry about, so they can trim the fat by the dissolution of an entire conference, and also keep their inventory up so that they don't lose a lot of those time windows, and those rivalries are able to keep going. But that's just my opinion about it.
I think you're right. And like when we're talking about trimming the fat, be honest, we're talking about Oregon State, Wazoo, probably Cal and Stanford. From like an ESPN standpoint, they could care less about academic prestige. They're looking to make it. They're looking for eyeballs, right?
Yeah, that's true. They don't care.
They don't care. So like that makes plenty of sense why they try to orchestrate something here where giving the Big 12 the pro rata and not giving the Pac what I think is fair market value. We've already had that conversation, and I understand your point about it too. But I feel like anything. I just really feel like anything in the $25 million range for these Pac schools is a complete lowball. I really do. Like I know Pac valuations. George K. was thinking around $40 million per school. He got those numbers from somewhere, right?
But who was it? It wasn't a firm like Endeavor. He hired his buddy to do that work for him instead of hiring an entire corporation to do it for you.
Yeah, pretty crappy analysis there, but like
Yeah, it was
somebody said 40 million.
Well, look, unless he could predict the future, Brett Yormark was just reading the same tea leaves everybody else was. He was just ahead of the game, realizing that the recession that was in the general economy was going to hit the media economy too. Normally it's insulated, because if people aren't happy in their jobs, they like to be distracted, bread and circuses, like the Romans did. And so usually those dollars don't go down. This is the very first time that those media dollars went down the exact same time that the other dollars went down, and that's why it's been a problem.
You know what? I know this is an unpopular take. I know this is, because I've seen especially Big 12 fan perspectives, but I think that the move to take that offer from ESPN obviously was strategic, because you got ahead of the pack, you took the time spots, right? Now the pack's in this jam, right? Like it was amazing strategy. Do I think that they left money under the table? Like probably. Like, I mean, I think that the Big 12's probably worth per school more than 32 million. I think the pack is too. But I think that strategically, I mean, if the idea was just to take out the pack by taking that deal and getting it done quick, then it makes sense, you know?
Yeah, I don't know if I believe that. I don't think they are. I think the Pac-12 has an inflated self-worth. That's just my opinion. I don't think there's not enough money out there. If there was a bunch of money, they would have a deal already. People are not sitting on loads of cash. They're firing people.
Well, we're not talking about like, let's get into this. I work in the finance world.
Right.
Well, we're talking about, something like media rights. We're not talking about like operating expenses. We're talking about like what's known as a cost of goods sold. Really, you need that inventory to drive your sales, your revenues, right?
Right.
And so it's mandatory that you're going to make those deals and stuff. It's not optional. ESPN's a media outlet that needs to buy games to sell, because that's their business, right? So it's not just like a person, like an employee and stuff that you can cut or lay off or something. It's completely different. It's not apples to apples there. So I don't think that the media recession really is having that big a bearing on what's going on right now.
That's not what Bob Thompson says, though. That's not what Jim Williams says.
I have a different perspective. I mean, they know that industry a little bit more. I know business a lot.
Yeah, and I don't put myself in either of you guys' shoes. I'm only repeating what somebody else has said.
Sure.
But originally, when the thing started, I asked Bob Thompson in September whether layoffs and a reception would affect media dollars. He said he didn't think it would. 7 months later, last month, somebody asked him the same question. He goes, yeah, it's definitely having an effect. So even he, who's a god of doing these media deals for sport entities, he was caught off guard. So you're not the only one that's also trying to learn the same information, right?
Yeah, and like these media contracts, keep in mind the payouts aren't happening until the future. They're not paying them today.
Right, but they're
you negotiate a 7-year deal. The money is staggering per year. That's when the payouts happen. So it's not during the media recession right now. You're talking about future dollars, right? Not today's dollars. So I don't know. I guess like I don't share that same thought with a lot
That's
of
fair.
I think if the Big Ten were up right now, they'd be getting paid wads of cash just like they did. I don't think it'd make any difference.
I think I disagree with you. The money's disappearing. ESPN just pulled its even $9 million offer from the Pac-12. Yeah. There's no money there. They're running out of money, operating budgets. Why do you think NBC is squeezing the Big Ten now? Why they're asking for their $5 million back? Because they realize that what was promised is not what they're going to receive. They're not just going to overpay to overpay.
So my understanding of that issue was that that Fox had rights to decide what happened to the Big Ten championship game.
But that's one of the things. Yeah. There were several. Yeah, but that's one of them. Sure.
Yeah, and so Warren, gave those rights away without Fox's, thumbs up. And
well,
so
basically double sold them
back to Fox.
Yeah, sold them to two people. Sold the same car to two people. That's not very nice. Let's get some comments in here. Let's see. Blake again. People forget ESPN wanted Big 12 to collapse. I've heard that since we joined the Big 12. I don't actually know if that's true or not. I think people have chips on their shoulders, but regardless, now ACC is spurning ESPN. Who do you think ESPN supports most now? So you're saying you treat them well, not now, that in the future they'll treat you well. Do you agree with that?
Let's see. So, who I think the ESPN supports the most now? I think it's pretty clear that it's not ACC.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Right.
ACC. Yeah, they if they supported the ACC, they'd renegotiate the contract right now.
Right.
I mean, that's the case with the ACC and
Yeah, talk about loyalty. That's a great example. In fact, the ACC is a great example of an entity, a media company that you would think would be loyal to the brands that are in a conference,
Yeah.
and yet they're telling them we're not going to renegotiate. Right? They're saying no, you have to stay the poor sisterhood of the children school. We're not going to pay you money like the big boys, and that's why the schools are dissatisfied. That's another example of loyalty. I just don't think it's valued as much as it should be.
Man, like it's again, like I think the relationships do matter in some way, shape, or form. Maybe that's me.
Yeah, well, I think
think
between
these
you and I
schools
think
are going
it's
to remember
true.
that. ESPN, like they will remember getting stuck by ESPN. The PAC schools are going to remember getting stuck by ESPN, and that might just come around to bite them. Like you don't treat people, conferences and stuff, and throw low figures at them. And if I'm the ACC, I'm squawking big time.
But the difference is conferences need media partners. Media partners do not need conferences.
If they want college football content, they do.
But there's only so many hours. It's been very well noted in the last several months. How many hours are there on a given Saturday of primetime TV coverage? It's limited. It's very small, right?
Right.
So the only thing that they can really sell is that high value access.
Yeah.
And right now they're already full.
They're full, and they've gone all in, haven't they, with the big in the SEC? So
yeah, I think they have. Yeah.
Yeah. And this speaks to the need for the P3, right? And
I think so.
Survives, to try to get up there, be more competitive. I mean, we're all suffocating in the back.
More consolidation, I think, is coming.
For sure.
Definitely. Mike Rayner's saying there's only one OSU, black and orange, in the Big 12. That would be interesting to bring Oregon State in and have them compete. Every year we could have a black and orange bowl down in Oklahoma and up in Corvallis.
Hey, Bomber, I want to bring an Oregon State person over here, and I want to have a conversation with their thoughts on what's going on right now.
Sure.
They've been pretty quiet and everything. I mean, they've somewhat on social media, but I really want to have a conversation about really what they're thinking right now, how they're positioning. I think that's a group that we could really support, at least, and build some awareness around what they're going through right here.
I completely agree. Them and Washington State. I would love to have representatives of those two schools pop in here. I've been posting the link. If you have your smartphone, you can click on that link and join us right now live. Or you can leave a comment, and we're trying to answer as many of these comments as we can. This one from Devil Frog is at Mike. This is a comment back to Mike. The two OSUs would have to flip a coin. Who gets orange? Who gets the primary color? That's a home game usually. Let's see here. We'll jump ahead just a little bit. Devil Frog. The only thing Stanford and Cal have going for them is top 10 media market. I think,
and great academics too. I mean, obviously,
who cares about that?
We would belabor that point. It doesn't matter to media companies.
We're talking football.
We're talking football.
I'm not talking academics. All right, let's see. Blake Phillips. It was $40 million before Fox ESPN overspent and took a huge risk on Big Ten. Well, ESPN's not part of the Big Ten, so you couldn't say ESPN took a big jump there. And the contracts for the SEC and ACC were signed years ago. So I don't know that that's true. It might be part of it, but I don't think that valuation was ever there.
I think the spirit of it really is that, ESPN and Fox spent all their money on the Big and the SEC, and there's just not much to go around anymore.
That's true.
We've been talking. I think that's the spirit.
Right. Yeah, I agree with you. Let's see here. Another comment from Blake. ESPN is in the business of locking up ACC. Up ACC for 40 million, 20 years. Do you know what he's saying there? I'm reading that. My eyes are jumping too much, I think.
3 to 40 million.
Oh, 30 to 40 million for 20 years. Well, they definitely did that. Do you think a conference is ever going to do that again?
Oh man. Yeah.
I don't think so.
I don't think you can do that anymore.
No, not unless they go to the NFL model and you have Fox and ESPN, just like we do in NFL, and you have two conferences that have 60 teams or whatever. then I
Yeah.
could see you doing something like that. But
Yeah, the 20-year contract idea, or however long the
yeah,
contract was. I mean, I can't imagine that happening in the future. Just how it's burning up the ACC right now. Like we're not even like close to halfway through.
I know.
Seriously,
It's
like,
insane.
things are blowing
Absolutely
up. Like
nuts.
there's just no way this thing can make it, right? Like I mean,
Yeah, I don't
all the
think so.
pressure on it now.
Too many people are dissatisfied. They're
Definitely.
saying
And,
the right
yeah.
things, but I think North Carolina wants out. Maybe even more than Florida State and Clemson at this point.
Well, yeah, the Magnificent Seven. Yeah, I think
Yeah.
they all went out, which is interesting because I'm not sure about NC State. Where are they going to end up? I'm not sure they're going to be in the SEC.
I think they're going to be in the Big 12. That's
So
just
do
my
I, for sure.
opinion.
Yeah. I say the same with Virginia Tech. And so some of those
Yeah.
schools better be careful. Tread
Virginia
careful.
Tech, Louisville, and Pittsburgh. I think that's your 4
Beautiful.
that could go,
Perfect.
and that would match perfect. That would match
yeah.
alignment with rivalries. It would make people happy with their competition level on a week to week. And it also balances schools. You have schools that are equally weighted there too. You don't have anybody coming in with a big head saying, we're going to rule the roost. The Big 12's strength is in its parity, and they need to lean into that. And that's what Yormark's doing. He's the smartest guy in the room. Absolutely. I'd love to meet him one day.
Let's get him on.
Really smart. Well, I sent notes to Ty Detmer. I sent notes to Tom Homo. So if there's anybody that's viewing and you guys can get me inside tracks to any of those legacy BYU people, let me know. And the same thing goes for Wild Ute and Utah stuff.
Absolutely.
We need to get some Utah reps on here as well, because we don't say fair and balanced, but we definitely say it's fun rivalry, and that's what we're trying to do. You know what? We've been an hour 20 minutes. I think we should about wrap it up. What do you think?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. Well, if you're still watching, please subscribe, hit the like button, leave us a comment. I try to answer all our comments back. And in the meantime, if you have story ideas or things you want us to cover, please let us know. I don't know what the technology is going to be to require so people can actually call from their phone instead of going from a smartphone. Maybe that's part of the reason why people didn't call in today more. But we want to encourage that level of give and take. We're not here for the quick dollar and here and now. We're here to be here for years, and we want this show to thrive and the rivalry to really be strong.
We care about your thoughts. We care about your thoughts. Your thoughts matter. It changes our perspective. Like every time we have this conversation, moving and hearing ideas, love it. That's what the show's all about. So I invite you to hop on, talk with us, to find us on Twitter. I'm the Wild Ute. And
let me get this comment out so we can get our names back up there. Sorry about that.
Yeah, let's have a conversation about like what's going on right here. Well, we want to hear your thoughts. I want to hear your thoughts. And
all right,
everyone's welcome in this community.
Follow us at the Holy Rivals. Follow me on Twitter. You can find me. Just look me up. And then Wild Ute, who is really, I kind of feel like I've birthed him out into the world where everybody appreciates him. He's a great guy, and if you guys aren't already interfacing with him, it's your disservice. So I would definitely look him up on Twitter and engage with him. He wants to understand about some of these other groups that, frankly, Utah has been cut out of for a while.
So I want to know the thinking of every single Big 12 and Pac fan base with these matters. I really do. I want to see what you're thinking because I'm going to change my thinking with those thoughts. So let's dialogue and go Utes.
Go Cougs. Peace out. See ya.
Later.